Okay, so listen up. We can all put our phones away. And if you have something you're about to start glazing, just kind of hold off, okay? Because we're going to introduce the new assignment that we're all going to do as a class, okay? So I've made this presentation to kind of introduce it. The assignment's called Clay Plus, which means it's clay plus another material, all right? So we're going to make something ceramic and then fire it, and then we're going to add a second piece, which is a different media, so not clay, all right? So this gives you kind of the basic idea of what we're going to do. Use clay and another material to create a sculpture. It does not need to be functional, and actually, since everything we've been doing so far has been functional pottery, you know, bowls, cylinders, things like that, we want you to kind of go the other way. Something that's not functional, something that only works as a sculpture, okay? So something that we're mostly kind of looking at, something that doesn't have to do something, okay? One thing I like to say is be aware of shrinking when you're thinking about your connections, okay? So when clay goes through the kiln, I'm sure you notice it shrinks just a little bit, okay? So if you have, say you have holes in your clay form that you want to wire something through, make sure that the holes are a little bigger than they need to be so that when it shrinks, it'll be the appropriate size. It does not need to be representational. So a lot of the examples I'm going to show you are, you know, of like animals or things that you can identify, but some of them are also abstract. So if you're interested in working kind of abstract, I think you can do some really cool stuff, and I have some cool examples for you. So it does not have to be representational. Examples of possible materials: you could use wood, you could use yarn, you could use pieces of fabric, wire, and different found objects. I have a real interest in using found objects, so I kind of lean towards that, but you guys can do whatever you want. Found objects would be like if you have something, you know, if you have like a pair of pliers or something, or like a, you know, really anything, like a bottle, any kind of thing that already exists that you kind of bring in to work with the clay. And so you'll see kind of more examples as we go. Okay, so here's kind of a first example I found, and these are all I just found on Google. But this is like a plate, but the artist has kind of cut that middle part kind of at the seam and put this fabric on the inside. So now you have something that's kind of like, it's sculptural. It's something that was functional that's not functional anymore. I think it's also really interesting that cut part at the top, it's almost like this skin that's being peeled back, but that's ceramic. So kind of the way that moves is very fluid, and it's very fabric in the way the clay form is, and the fabric is also there as actual fabric. So really interesting one there. Here's another one by the same artist. And here's an example of a found object. So these kind of clamps, these kind of medical clamps that you might see a doctor use in an autopsy, is being used to kind of peel back this layer of clay to kind of show the inside part. Okay, so this one I found was really interesting, because if you look at the clay, looks like it's like an illusion, you know? The clay looks like it's soft, that it's being pulled back, almost like it's skin, but it's hard. I mean, it's clay, it's fired. So it was pretty interesting. Here's another representational one. It's a deer, but the antlers are wooden branches. So here's one that you'd have to keep in mind with the shrinking, right? So if you had your branches beforehand and you made your deer in such a way that the holes were the perfect size to fit the branches in, when you fire it through, it's going to be a little too small. So you'll either have to sand down the branches or kind of beforehand make the holes a little bit bigger so that when they shrink, they're kind of that perfect size. Okay, so this one's interesting because it kind of mixes like the subject, which is like a deer, is kind of also mixing in kind of the natural environment of the deer, you know? It's like they're in the woods, it's using wood, it's using these found branches. So I thought it was interesting. And this one's kind of funny. It's also a found object one, where you have that faucet, but this is actually two ceramic pieces, kind of the in and the out of a fish. So it looks, you know, kind of like the fish is going through that faucet. Okay, so another found object. And here's a more abstract one. So that central form, it's kind of hard to tell what's ceramic and what's not, but that kind of pink and bluish gray form is ceramic. And then this looks like maybe a plastic. That L that orange L shape might be plastic, and then like that black piece looks like, I don't know, it looks like almost like it could be rubber. And then the bottom part looks like they're rocks that the artist has found and kind of jammed them in there with what looks like kind of a glue. So you don't have to do stuff representation. I mean, I think it's lovely, and it's, it doesn't have to be anything. This is kind of the idea of using wire. So it's the ceramic form is the bottom, and the holes are cut out, and the wire is kind of fed through and then kind of turned into this mesh with these beads. So a lot of the examples I found are like a ceramic piece that maybe has a piece missing, and you kind of complete that piece using the other form. So kind of like a half and half, or like think of maybe like a broken and almost like a repair. This one's pretty cool. The found object, it's works, it's so cohesive, but the part that's not ceramic is the bottom. So some of these, they have a kind of a display stand. So like this is like I'm not sure what exactly, I think it's meant to hold ceramics, that part on the bottom with the legs. But the way that it kind of goes into this form is pretty kind of subtle, and it kind of unifies the whole thing. Also kind of more abstract, but like you get pieces of certain things. Like the top looks, very kind of porcelain, painted china kind of, but then like the middle is like this weird red, almost anime looking form. Really interesting one. So here's some more ceramic with different handles. So the handles are made out of wood, and the artist kind of cut holes in the ceramics that the wood fits kind of perfectly into. So again, with the shrinking, you have to keep that in mind when you're doing stuff like that. And then that kind of taller one is like ceramic at the bottom, and then it's weaved with like, I don't know if that's straw or what exactly it is, but you can see how it has that ceramic bottom, but then it kind of completes the form with this secondary material. Okay. Another similar one. Here you got, it's really interesting, I think, in that kind of dovetail joint. So you have this, and I think it's a pretty big piece too. But the artist has cut out those kind of trapezoid shapes in the clay, and then after it's gone through, I think that she made the wooden pieces to fit perfectly in to those kind of trapezoid shapes. So it's really kind of interested in both materials, right? It's interested in that ceramic base, but then in the woodworking part that connects it, okay? So, and even this, you could say this is functional, but it's kind of a layer removed from the functional. It's like, it's more decorative than it is functional, even though you could use it to hold stuff, right? So this one's really abstract. Lovely piece though. So that pink part is ceramic, I think it's porcelain, and then it has like this kind of rug that it sits on. And it's hard to tell from there, you can't tell the details a whole lot, but this little form kind of in the middle there is like this beaded wire that's like very intricately kind of connected. Yeah, so working abstract could be really interesting. These are a few more examples. So these are branches again, and you see how it kind of completes the form. You have that top part of the woman, and then you have the branches that kind of complete the dress, This is kind of more advanced, I would say, but definitely something that you could do. And then here we have the little dragon. This was nice because it's starting to think about like the base, which is kind of a very sculptural idea. So you have that wooden base part, and then you have these found objects, which are these rocks. And I think that the rest is ceramic, unless the egg might be made of something else, but it might also be ceramic. But the dragon definitely is ceramic. And then the fish, it looks like the main body part of the fish is ceramic, but the fins look like they're almost like very thin paper with like bamboo or toothpicks or something like that. So more representational stuff, but definitely stuff you could do. And I think this is my last one. So we have a couple owls, and it looks like the ceramic part is just the owl, and then the base is kind of like this rock or this, I I think it's a rock or maybe a fake rock that the artist has kind of put the owl on top of. And in the other one, I think it's a branch, but definitely kind of leaning towards the surreal there with like the, the antlers and things like that. Okay? So I hope that gives you kind of a good, I think that's my last one, yeah. So I think that hopefully that was a good kind of survey of not exactly options, but maybe ideas for you to work with. Do you have any questions just now about? No? Okay. So I think that today, if you want to start, so here's another kind of list of different materials you might want to use. You could use rocks from a river, you could use cork, you could use coke tabs, wire, any kind of wire stuff that we have. So this is stuff that we have here. Okay, so this is stuff that we have that you might be interested in using. Different kind of wire, mosaic tiles, fake flowers and leaves, raffia, or thick twine, thread, yarn. We have wooden pieces, some fabric, some branches, toothpicks, tissue paper, popsicle sticks, seashells, lots of stuff. Okay, so if you're having trouble kind of getting started, maybe that's a good way to start. It's like look at some of these materials, see what kind of jumps out at you, and think about it like that. So when you're kind of sketching, when you're thinking about this, I want you to be thinking about, the ceramic form and how it relates to this other media, right? Because I think with all the examples, even of how different they all were, they all had that kind of marriage between the two, And that's really what we're looking for, something that kind of has the two pieces and they go together, right? So think about the ceramic and then think about your other material too, okay? So I think if you want to start sketching or start looking at some materials, be a good way to start today. And then I think there's some stuff we don't want to have them glazed too. And then there's some stuff that came out if you want to glaze it too, okay? As you're thinking or maybe after you have an idea, okay? Good.